When I saw this article in the Epic Times, I knew that I had to cover it, simply because I've been asking myself the same exact question for a long time now. Why are young people, young adults, most frightened of COVID even though they are the least at risk? Why is this? Well, we're going to break it down and talk about many reasons as to why this is such an issue and just talk about your risk factor of COVID in general. But before we get started, I'm Dr. Nick Zarowski. Welcome to the channel. Be sure to subscribe, hit that notification bell. Remember that the notifications are what truly matters, not the subscriber button. So hit that notification bell, give this video a thumbs up, and share with me your thoughts in the comments below. And for all my videos, go to www.drz.tv. Let's dive in. Now, here's the thing. Is that in my clinic, I wonder to myself every day why these younger individuals are coming in just terrified of dying of COVID. It makes no sense to me. I can't figure it out. This article helped actually shed a lot of light on it for me, and hopefully I can shed some light on the situation for you as well. Let's get started. Nearly 3 million Americans are being vaccinated against COVID-19 each day, but the return to normal may not be as close as they may hope. Now, I find this ridiculous because if you actually truly believe in the vaccine, why in the world do you not get to return to normal after you get it? These companies, these vaccine companies are saying how effective they are, but yet they're telling people, yeah, they're effective, but it doesn't really change anything. Are you kidding me? So what is it that these people believe? It's so hard to understand it. A new survey shows that Americans have concerns about interacting with others once the pandemic is over. A YouGov poll of more than 4,000 people find that 2 in 5, 39% of Americans say that they're very or fairly nervous about the idea of interacting with people socially again, wrote a YouGov data journalist, Jamie Ballard. This is crazy. 39% of Americans are afraid to go about their normal life again. I mean, the level of fear instilled in people is sickening because it's totally unjustified. You're going to see more as to why. Well, the high percentage of Americans expressing angst about socializing after the pandemic comes to it as a surprise. The breakdown along age groups is even more surprising. Among 18 to 24-year-olds, 50% say they're nervous about it. A similar number of 25 to 35-year-olds, 47%, feel the same way. Okay. In other words, nearly half of Americans between 18 and 34 are concerned about returning to normal social life after the pandemic. In contrast, just 31% of those over 55 responded they are nervous about interacting with people again. So the young people are the ones who are freaking out here. It's not the older people. And this just blows my mind because statistically, they have like literally, if you go and look at the percentage of risk that they have, it's close to very, very close to zero. Like if you were to just round it out to the nearest number, it would be a 0% risk. The contrast is noteworthy because it's widely understood that young people are far less likely to be hospitalized or die from COVID-19. But the question is, how less likely, okay? I mean, all these young people are freaking out, like I said, terrified, and they don't even understand the risk. Our World in Data has a chart breaking down the case fatality rates in South Korea, China, Italy, and Spain. The data show the case fatality rate is about 0.2% for people in their 20s and 30s, and a tiny fraction compared to people over 60. Okay, data from the United States tells a similar story. Now, once again, I don't know how the other countries are basically compiling their data. But remember that in the United States, the CDC has changed the way that they are counting deaths for the first time in 18 years. They're putting COVID ahead of everything. In the past, and I did a whole video on this breaking it down, but in the past, if you got cancer and you were at end-stage cancer in the United States and then you got a bacterial infection, you would say, well, the person died of end-stage cancer with secondary causes of a bacterial infection. Or if maybe you had heart disease, it'd say, well, you know what? They died of heart disease, but then they developed a virus. And so primary cause was heart disease, secondary, or even maybe tertiary was the virus. Well, now they're basically saying everything is COVID-19. So, you know, you're getting these people who are getting hit by cars and then they're testing them and they're saying COVID-19. You're getting people who literally were on their deathbed and then they test them and they say COVID-19. And so we can see how the numbers are hyperinflated here in the United States and why the CDC actually decided to change the way that they're going to count deaths is beyond me. Actually, there's many lawsuits against that whole thing going on in the United States right now that not many people know about. Many states are suing over it because it's basically hyperinflating their numbers when they're like, no, these aren't true COVID deaths. The death rate in New York City for adults aged 75 years and older was around 2,344 per 100,000 people as of March 28th. And this is about 500 times higher than the death rate, 5 per 100,000 for people in the 18 to 24 range. Now, I want to note about New York City, it was a totally botched situation. Of course, a lot of people want to make this a political issue. The fact is that you did have politicians who were making very bad decisions in order to basically get stardom, right? They wanted to be heroes, and so they were making very bad decisions for people, and New York is a prime example of that one. So their death rate is far more than most places. Now, when we look at young people, 5 per 100,000, okay, ages 18 to 24. Do you know that the risk of dying in a car accident, the odds are 1 in 107? Okay, 5 per 100,000 versus 1 in 107. This is insane, okay? Like I said, this is a very unjustified fear that these people are facing. And in this article later on, it talks a little bit more as to why, which I think is very interesting, which I deep down knew, but it was just well explained here. Nationwide, research from the Heritage Foundation shows that adults aged 25 to 34 account for less than 3,000 of the official 565,000 COVID-related deaths in the United States. Once again, that number is very hyperinflated. Many of these deaths, it should be noted, are linked to comorbidities. That's another thing that's very important to understand. I've said this from the inception of me being able to truly wrap my head around what was going on with COVID, that the only thing that matters is your baseline health. So when they were closing down gyms and telling people to stay home and people were gaining a whole bunch of weight, I was saying, hey, this is an opportunity to get your health right, because your baseline health is what matters. If you're obese, if you have heart disease, if you have high cholesterol, if you have any other comorbidities, it is so important to get things straightened out. It's important to lose that weight, start exercising, start eating right. But instead, people were at home actually doing all the opposite, which is very detrimental to their health. Now, the other thing that you have to look at is, what is the state of your immune system? I talk about this all the time. I literally formulated in my clinic, which you guys have access to, and I'll put in the description below, is these immune packs where it's got vitamin D in it and zinc and things like N-acetylcysteine, which is very important for helping clear mucus from the lungs and improving lung health and helping you produce antioxidants like glutathione, which is extraordinarily powerful in the body. And then vitamin C. I mean, we put all this in there for my patients. Like I said, you have access to it. I'll put it in the description. And this is what really matters, is your immune system functioning well, because a healthy functioning immune system fights all this stuff off. This data should come as no surprise. Nearly a year ago, Stanford University noted that COVID-19 infection fatality rate is almost zero. I mentioned this, and this is for people under 45. I didn't even throw that out there. For people under 45, it's almost zero. Like I said, if you round it out, it's zero. An inverse relationship. The article goes on. All the official data points in the same direction. Young people have the least to fear from COVID-19, yet the YouGov poll shows that they are the most afraid. This is odd, as influencers on Twitter noted the level of comfort people feel in returning to normal life is inversely correlated to the level of their actual risk, okay? So basically saying the young people are freaking out and the old people are like, yeah, whatever, you know? I think it just shows like a little bit of more of an understanding of life, and, you know, a little bit of a tougher generation who's seen a little bit more versus a softer one. I don't know any other way to put it. Maybe the older generation has seen more and they're able to just kind of, you know, sift through the data and understand it better. This invites an important question. Why are young people so afraid? One obvious answer is young adults might simply be unaware their risk of serious illness is low, okay? As I recently noted, Americans in general are widely misinformed about the risk of hospitalizations from COVID-19. Thank you. I've been saying this all along, how uninformed people are. And actually, let's not even say uninformed. How about ill-informed, okay? Because they're informed with the wrong information. With roughly a third of Americans believing the chance of being hospitalized with the virus is upwards of 50%. In actuality, it's closer to 1%. I actually talked about this. They did this. They went and they asked people. They were just like polling people, and they're going like, "What is your risk of dying from COVID-19?" And people's risk was like 50 to 100 times higher than their actual risk. And they're saying right here, with roughly a third of Americans believing their chances of being hospitalized with the virus are 50%, and it's actually 1%. I had to repeat that because that's how off people are when it comes to this. People are literally terrified. They're terrified. And it's a good, this right here, it's a good little snippet to save in your mind and go and ask people who are unjustly freaking out. Literally ask them, what do you think your risk of being, hospitalized from COVID? And then let them answer, because they're probably going to say, ooh, 70%. No, it's just 1%. It's a good little good little trivia to keep in your back pocket. The reasons for this aren't hard to find. Studies have shown that U.S. media essentially created, and here's a real problem. Here's a real problem: a climate of fear by publishing a flood of negative news in 2020. Indeed, an Ivy League-led study concluded that 91% of U.S. articles in major media were negative in tone, nearly double when compared to non-U.S. media. Wow, how sickening is that? How sick is that? Actually, one of the reasons I started this very channel is because I couldn't take it anymore. I literally couldn't take it. One of the reasons I just started www.DrZTV is because I can't take it anymore. Literally, it's killing me to watch people suffer out there with wrong information. And this is where it's coming from. The media is horrible today. It is horrible. The negative news, the researchers noted, continued even when the pandemic was ebbing and when the positive medical breakthroughs were being achieved. Stories of increasing COVID-19 cases outnumbered stories of decreasing cases by a factor of 5.5, even during periods when new cases were declining, researchers noted. Media may not be the only part of this equation. However, digital technology may be another. Now, one of the things I think that is a big factor in young people being totally misled on this is that young people think social media is real, where older people are like, they look at social media and they just interpret it differently. They don't look at social media and go like, this is life, this is everything, this is factual. Older people don't look at it like that. Young people, it's everything, right? And so as you're going and you're younger and you're scrolling through Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, and they're actually going and suppressing information that's honest and true, and they're showing you information that is dishonest and allowing for that dishonest information to the scare tactics and the fear and everything else to be pushed out. What do you think, the younger generation essentially is going to believe? I mean, if you think of the model, so there was that group of, and I talk about these guys all the time because they were actually brilliant. There was a group of doctors from California, I believe, and they owned a whole group of clinics. And basically what they did is they laid out what they saw with COVID, and they gave the projections and everything, and they were kicked off of all social media. And their projections were wildly accurate as to what we are seeing today, whereas the projections that the guys like Fauci and the government were using were, they're talking like, tens of millions of people dying, and it just wasn't true. And the actual doctors who are on the ground working with patients who actually, now looking at where we are today, were 100% accurate. They were not allowed to speak the truth. They weren't allowed to speak what they were actually seeing on the ground, which is sickening, okay? And there's a lot of very good doctors out there that are being censored right now, just if you're not aware of that. Very good people who have been on the internet, and doctors who have been helping people transform their life for the past, 20 years since the inception of the internet, and they're being kicked off of like pretty much every social media platform. I'm not going to give a list of names because it doesn't matter, but understand that your like health freedom rights are being stripped from you, and the people who are out there trying to give you the right information, they're being shut down. Let's go on with this article because it's going to talk more about that. Young people less likely to die from COVID. When writing this article, I had to find statistics on the risks of COVID-19 for young adults. To find the information, I did what I would normally do. I went to Google and typed in keywords for what I was looking to find. Young people less likely to die of COVID is what they typed in. I was expecting to find on top a bunch of articles and research showing that young people have relatively little to fear from the coronavirus, but that's not what happened. This is very interesting, so pay attention to this. Here are the top results I got. Coronavirus and COVID-19. Younger adults are at risk too, John Hopkins. And John Hopkins is a horrible place right now. I mean, they are giving out so much misinformation. What young, healthy people have to fear from COVID, The Atlantic. Data reveals deadliness of COVID-19 even in young adults. Young people are at risk of severe COVID-19 illness. Dying young, the healthcare workers in the 20s killed by COVID-19. Okay, so people, sometimes I think people think that when I talk about this stuff, maybe I'm trying to rile them up, or maybe I'm trying to, or maybe let's just say they think that I am exaggerating and that maybe I am just going a little bit too far. Look, I'm somebody who does a ton of research on the internet. I mean, I research and research and research. I mean, I put out so much health information. I'm always researching. And I started telling people back almost a year ago that the Google search is being highly manipulated. And when I'm looking for studies that I know that I had read, a year prior to that, that gave certain information, like were just pretty much non-existent, and I couldn't dig them up and I couldn't find them anymore. It really blew me away. And a lot of people are like, oh, come on, how could that be? I'm telling you, the Google search engine is highly manipulated to give you the information they want to give you, but not the real true information. So if you're a young person and you type this in, what are you going to think? Now, put in the comments below, what do you think of this? I mean, how do you feel about the big tech companies going and manipulating data like this? This is a big deal. We live in a digital world, and Google is the biggest search engine on the planet, processing more than 3.5 billion searches a day. Millions of people probably use Google every day to find information about the coronavirus, but instead are finding articles that point out COVID-19 is hundreds of times more deadly for people over 60 than people under 40. Anyone who Googled about young people and the risk would find a bunch of super scary headlines, okay? And once again, young people put a lot of stock in technology, and but not necessarily figuring out what the reality is. And so if you're a young person, you're like, yeah, mom and dad, Google is God. They know everything. Again, this isn't to say young people face no risk from COVID-19, but although it is close to 0%, but the medical reality is that children and young adults are more likely to die from the seasonal flu, pneumonia, or a car crash. Oh, look at that. I didn't even get to this part of the article yet. Or a car crash. Let me say that again, or a car crash. I mean, clearly most Americans aren't aware of this, okay? The price of disconnect. Let's go on. The YouGov poll results show there is a disconnect between perception and reality when it comes to COVID-19. Unfortunately, the disconnect has real-world consequences. Those who overestimate the risk to young people or hold an exaggerated sense of risk upon infection are more likely to favor closing schools, restaurants, I talk about this all the time, and businesses. And that's from the author of the recent Franklin Templeton Gallup study concluded. Now, this is very dangerous, and it was really interesting because where I live, the school systems went and they did a vote. They're like, well, we don't want to be responsible. Let's put it on the parents. The parents voted in favor 90%, over 90%, that they wanted to send their kids back to school. And the teachers wanted to be in school with the kids. And the school boards shut it down. They said no. And then the parents were livid. They're like, why did you even bother asking our opinions if you were going to shut it down? And just being that I take care of a lot of parents, I can tell you that they're livid with this situation. And so once again, you have the school board where, look, I get it that they don't understand the actual reality. They're at home watching garbage news, thinking that like the world is crumbling right in front of their eyes and that everybody's dying left and right, dropping like flies. And so they said, hey, I don't want blood on my hands. I'm closing the schools down. Same thing when we look at states. I mean, I'm in Michigan. I mean, restaurants have taken a beating and small businesses have taken a beating because the governor here has shut things down continually all year. I mean, I don't want to say all year. I mean, it's been a year and a half we've dealt with it here. So it's been horrible. It's been horrible. People are struggling immensely. And it's just not right. I mean, it's literally taking people's livelihoods out from underneath them. This is important because these restrictions are quite serious. And I want to mention too, the problem is that like in Michigan, one of the things that I find so interesting is that it's almost like a bubble here, right? People believe that COVID-19 is super bad and super scary and everybody's going to die from it, where you can leave the state and you can go to another state and everybody's like, hey, life is good. Everything's fine. People were leaving Michigan to go to Ohio just to go out to eat because all the restaurants were closed here. It was a very common thing. And so when you live in that bubble, and all that fear is instilled, the dangerous part is that even though the restaurants open back up and the schools open back up and many of these businesses open back up, just like this article mentioned, people are still too afraid to go out. So it's still crushing them all. Closing parts of the economy is no small matter. These actions are associated with numerous unintended consequences. Oh, like what we have in Michigan right now, job losses, mental health deterioration. I talk about this all the time. I take care of a lot of elderly in my clinic, and mental health deterioration was a very big problem. I mean, the depression and anxiety and the mental health issues that came out of this were horrifying for the elderly. Increased global poverty, surging loneliness, health procedures deferred, big problem too, and more. Meanwhile, the documented benefits of these restrictions remain elusive. And there is, I mean, when you look at all the different quote unquote benefits, there is no proven benefits. It is all proven to not work. The lockdowns, the masks, there's no proven benefits that have come out of this. In 2020, we witnessed unprecedented infringements on fundamental civil liberties, and it all stemmed from fear. I want everybody to think about this word fear for a minute because this is a big problem in today's world, society, and of course the young people. Fear, okay? What are you afraid of? I say this all the time. I mean, I'm a big fan of always taking action on improving your health naturally, boosting your immune system. Take action. It's so important. Worse, despite the presence of numerous successful vaccines, at the time this article was being written, maybe they had a right to say that, but based off what we know today, with all the negative side effects coming out, numerous successful vaccines, that doesn't exist. And crashing case numbers the crashing case numbers are really due to herd immunity, and the alarm bells keep sounding. So basically they're saying, even though things are basically looking up, they just keep ringing the alarm bell, saying it will never end. The CDC director, Dr. Rochelle Walensky, is warning of an impending doom. I mean, these people are horrible. They are just horrible. While others warn we must begin planning for a permanent pandemic. I mean, I personally think that like this is something that is here to stay, and it's not here to stay in the way that we think that like, oh, there's just always going to be this permanent virus just going around just hitting people. It's more that like a lot of the powers that be, they want a permanent pandemic so that people can just be afraid forever. The New York Times is using Florida, which has lifted all pandemic restrictions last summer, as a cautionary tale by using rather tortured analysis, okay? And here's the thing that's so interesting about Florida is that they are doing great down there. They're doing great despite literally a surge of people from all over the U.S. going there. I mean, literally, I can't tell you. I mean, I feel like half of Michigan is in Florida right now. I know so many people heading down there and just staying down there for months because they just want normal life. So despite all the people pouring in and out of Florida, they're still doing better than states like Michigan, who had just drastic lockdown rules. Here's one of the things I tell people all the time. You can run, but you can't hide, because at the end of the day, everybody is going to get this virus, okay? It's going to go through, everybody's going to get it, and then life goes on. Now, what we're clearly seeing, though, is that the states that had these really enormous lockdowns, the governors were praised as being heroes because they were crushing the numbers so good. I mean, they were literally heroes. They were on TV all the time spouting off about how great they are. Well, what happens is they just basically pushed it down the road. This was a problem they kicked down the road. So instead of everybody getting sick maybe early on, they kicked the problem down the road and they told everybody to stay home. And now as soon as everybody comes out, the numbers go back up. Now they just look like they can't get their state under control because other states just went through it and got through it. And because some of these states hid from it, now they're dealing with the consequences later on. All they did was kick the problem down the road. They didn't solve anything. Considering all this, it's no surprise that many young people are terrified of the virus, but we do well to remember that fear is the pathway to subservience. If you want to control someone, all you have to do is make them feel afraid. It's something to really think about. Something to really think about. It's time to stop being afraid, and the first step comes through understanding. So do you understand your risk? Put in the comments below. Do you understand your risk? Do you understand how important it is to not be afraid and to take action and take control of your health? Do it naturally, boost your immune system. Like I said, I'll put the immune boosters that we're using in our clinic. I want you to have access to it in the description. You can check those out. But it's time to take action on your health and not just run and be afraid, because at the end of the day, there's always going to be a million things out there that can kill you, and we don't live forever. But one of the things that we can do is we can take control by taking action and make changes to improve our health today. Check out other videos on the channel, and also check out my website, www.drz.tv, for my full library of all natural health videos.